Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michela Conigliaro, and I work in the Urban Forestry and Agroforestry program in the Forest Resource Management team. And I will provide you with an overview of the activities our program developed. I will try to keep it short, although there are two programs, so it could take a bit more time. First of all, urban forestry and agroforestry, they are very different management practices. They actually are implemented in two completely different contexts, one in urban areas, the other one in agricultural land. But what they have in common actually is that they both deal with integrating trees in non-forest context. Also agroforestry, as we will see, can also be bringing crop into the forest, but basically it's integrating trees in non-forest context. So urban forestry, just to provide you with a few overview of what's the context, the global context worldwide. Actually, we have more and more cities around the world, and cities are growing fast. The population is growing fast. And actually, according to the projection made by UN, by 2050, we will have 2.5 billion people more living in cities. And 90% of this growth is actually expected to happen in Africa and Asia, that are actually the region where urbanization is going faster. And also, most of this growth will not happen in megacities. So cities that are expected to increase their population faster and more are actually small, medium cities. So cities that have up to 500,000 inhabitants and that are actually even less prepared to face this increasing urbanization and urban population growth. The consequences of this unplanned growth are actually already visible. More and more natural resources are being exploited and overexploited for actually trying to meet the new needs of the increasing urban population. We have lack of water, lack of food, increasing poverty around cities and within cities, and also extreme climatic events are happening more and more often, bringing to flooding events and landslides with consequent death of many people within urban areas. And the urgency to actually address the issue of urban sustainability has been flagged internationally by the international community in many different settings. The Sustainable Development Goals already called for making cities more sustainable, with an SDG dedicated to city and sustainability. The Habitat 3 conference that actually resulted in the launch of the new urban agenda is also based on the assumption that urbanization, so urban development, can be actually supporting the development worldwide, but it has to be based on well-planned and well-managed urbanization. And also, the Paris Agreement actually clear call on cities and city administrators on taking actions to tackle climate change. So it's actually globally recognized that the challenge of sustainability is has already moved to cities. And so we have to act and to take actions within cities to also face all these international and global challenges. So what is urban forestry? Urban forestry is actually the management of the urban forest of a city to ensure its optimal contribution to the well-being of the society, of the local community. What's the urban forest? The urban forest is actually the system composed by all the trees we find inside the city and around the city. So from single trees to parks to street trees, but also peri-urban forest. So we can say that it's the system that includes all the tree systems that are actually linked functionally or physically present within a city. Why FAO promotes urban forestry? Actually, urban forests and trees can provide a wide range of ecosystem services and products to cities and to citizens. They can provide food, clean water. So actually, depending on the system we focus on, we have different kinds of ecosystem services that can be provided. Street trees that we see in the first picture, actually they can provide shade to pedestrians, so they can help cities to adapt, and the community to adapt also to the increasing temperature within cities. They can also increase the permeability of the the street, actually. So supporting in not avoiding but in mitigating extreme climatic event. They can also be key in air pollution, in cleaning the air, and so in increasing the quality of the air. And while, for example, pocket parks, or parks where people can go for recreate, can be really key in providing people with spaces for physical exercise, supporting let's say the reduction of non-communicable disease, the frequency of non-communicable disease within the population. They can also support mental health. They can also contribute to clean the air as well within cities. And we also have peri-urban forests. Peri-urban forests can really play a key role because they are actually a source of food. They can be a source of wood for the timber, so actually also reducing the overexploitation of natural forests for responding to the need for the supply of these products. But they're also key because they actually protect the watershed from where the water is actually supplied to the city. So they increase and ensure the quality and the quantity of the water that arrive to cities. And in addition to this, they can also, urban forests also create new jobs, provide income to the population because they actually are employing more people within the city. They can also be key, as we said, in capturing carbon, so in climate change mitigation as well, and adaptation for sure. And okay, so urban forestry, as we said, have many benefits, and most of them can contribute to most of the SDGs. SDG 11, first of all, but also to all the others, as well to the new urban agenda that is also clearly calling for cities to increase the green spaces in the urban areas, to make them accessible, to make them safe. So actually there is a clear link to the role that urban forests can play in achieving these global goals. About the SDG, the four main SDG that urban forests can support in achieving, as we said, are sustainable cities and communities, but also life on land, because they can help in protecting biodiversity, the increasing biodiversity, in enhancing the quality of the soils, in land restoration. But they can also help in climate change action. As we said, they can help in adapting to climate change, but also mitigating, because they can reduce the green gas emission by shading the buildings and by decreasing the need for heat and cool. They also help in saving energies and saving in greenhouse gas emissions. And also for health, as we say, they are really key because they can increase the air quality and can really be a set where people can exercise, recreate, and relax. But to be functional, an urban forest must be managed as a whole. It means that it must be actually integrated within the city, integrated with the grey infrastructure, that is actually the building, the streets, all what is built, with the blue infrastructure, that are all the rivers and all the blue, let's say, of the city, and with all the other elements of the green infrastructure that are present in a city. So what are the key constraints to urban forestry implementation? So why we are actually, there is a need also for FAO to support the implementation of urban forestry in cities and in countries. There are many different constraints, institutional constraints, because often there is a lack of awareness among policymakers of the real benefits that urban forests can provide to cities. There's a lack of coordination between sectors. Often we don't know exactly who is responsible for what in cities. There is a weak governance on urban forestry. Often there is no participation from the community. People are not engaged in the choices that are done, in what are the priorities for the city and for the community. And also economically, what's the point? Urban forests they can pay back it takes time, okay, for urban forests to provide some services and products are provided immediately. Others take time, of course. So there is also an issue about looking at urban forests as investment. Often it's seen by local administrators as expense, because often local administrators say for a short time, 4 years, 5 years, they don't know what will happen after. So often they don't have the interest in investing in something that will pay for sure, but will pay more later on, let's say. There is also a lack of technical knowledge, so often there is not enough training or knowledge about how to care trees within cities. That is completely different from forests, from taking care of trees in forests and managing trees in forest. Also policy, there is a lack of harmonization and integration between UPF-related policies and city policies, and socially often there is a conflict on land use and how these trees and these resources should be used. So different actions are required. There is a need for long-term planning and investments, full involvement of stakeholders, adequate land use policies, research and information exchange. Best practices must be shared by cities. So cities that maybe are more advanced should share and teach other cities how to address maybe the same challenges. And also urban forest must be integrated in the overall plan of the city. Often where is there, urban forest is treated as something apart, but it must be integrated and to have its benefits maximized. So what FAO does? Actually, FAO supports cities in implementing urban forest to address, to maximize the socioeconomic and environmental benefits it can provide towards more sustainable but also resilient urban development. FAO works on 5 main channels, let's say. We do normative work and technical work, networking, field projects, capacity building, and communication and awareness raising. These are the 5 main channels that FAO work through. About normative work, we have been in 2016, sorry, because it was a long process, so it started in 2011, and that's finally in 2016, we released the guidelines on urban forestry. That is actually a normative document, a forestry paper, that is aimed to support cities and practitioners as well in implementing urban forests. So the interesting thing is that there are 3 parts. One is more on enabling the environment. So what policies, how can I enable the environment for having a good governance, good policies, a legal framework that can really support implementation of urban forestry. And then there is, we took the different issues like for addressing climate change, for addressing biodiversity, for addressing food security, different kind of actions must be taken. And so we decided to go by focusing on 10 main challenges that cities can have to face in order to provide a guidance on how to address the different issues. And then there is last part on supporting the process. So engaging the community, involving stakeholders, building partnership is key for really building something that can work and can really support urban forest implementation. And then we put information within reach. It means that we have, for example, we created a discussion group where people from all over the world can exchange about information, research, share documents, inform each other about events and conferences that can be of interest of others. And here there is a link in case you want to join it. It's open to any expert that is interested. Then we have a module in the SFM toolbox about urban forestry and the management of urban forests. And then we also actually test the collect thought software for actually assessing the trees. We applied this in urban areas to see how it works and if it could be used for implementing quite easy and easy assessment, where in many, especially in areas where people are not trained enough to maybe go for more detailed assessment. This provides a quite good overview of what's the canopy cover in a city. Then we also have projects, of course. These are projects that, some of the projects that have been developed over the last years, and I took one as an example. In Cape Verde, we know that there was a strong environmental problems. There was increasing risk for landslide, flooding, loss of biodiversity, so a number of issues to be addressed. FAO was actually requested to support the country in implementing some actions within the country, in some of the cities, in 3 cities. And actually, we assessed the existing urban forestry. Trained the people, the local experts in assessing the urban forest. We built the capacity of local stakeholders, promoting intersectoral coordination, and everything was initiated to really go towards an urban forestry strategy. So it was, let's say, prepare the ground for, to enable the environment, let's say, for really try to go for developing and then implementing an urban forestry strategy. Key success factors were the community was involved since the beginning, that there was really a partnership involving many different stakeholders, and also that there was an integration of urban forestry in the city planning. So these were the key issues that allowed this project to be successfully implemented. Then communication material that is divulgative for people to really raise awareness on the importance of urban forest. Then we have regional networks. In particular, we have 3 networks that are quite active. The last one, Silva Mediterranea, is active in the Mediterranean area, and it's now at its 11th meeting, will be held this year. And Latin America we will have the second Latin American urban forestry meeting in November this year in Bogota. And Asia Pacific will have the 3rd one. The first one was in China, the second in Republic of Korea, and this one we still don't know exactly what will be the venue, but we are working on that and will be held probably at the beginning of 2020. So interest for the regions is there, and we saw that many experts actually are participating and are interested in exploring more this environment. And what is interesting is that this call experts from many different disciplines, like we have urban planners, architects, foresters, arborists. So it's really a discipline that is intersectoral. So it's important that all the different voices and expertise are put together to build something that can work in a city. And then networking at global level. This year, by the last year, in 2018, November, the first World Forum on Urban Forest was held. That was actually aimed to support the new urban agenda and really strengthen the existing international network. And the 2 main results that we had, the 2 main outcomes, are the launch of the call for action. The call for action is actually a vision that cities have about how the city should be and how urban forests can support the achievement of those, of being greener, healthier, happier, cooler, and so on. So it's a vision that was prepared in preparation of this World Forum on Urban Forests that was shared and let's say developed together with other partners and also with cities. And then the 3 Cities of the World program, that is actually a program that is aimed to, is a recognition scheme. So cities are actually called to pledge for achieving those 5 standards. And once achieved those 5 standards, they will be labeled 3 Cities of the World. So this is actually to invite cities to take action towards those 5 that seem to be very easy standards to reach, but actually they are not, because establishing responsibility, often in cities you don't know exactly who is responsible for what, for managing the urban forest, setting the rules, who does what and when and how, preparing an urban forestry management plan is not there most of the times. Know what you have means assessing. You have to know what you have to be able to manage and to know where are the gaps. Allocate resources also. You must ensure that budget is there, but not at the end with the money that remain, but in advance. When you plan, you have to consider the urban forest and expenditure for managing the urban forest. And then also celebrating achievement that actually is engaging the local community, because it's a way to make people to participate to the achievements that you have obtained. Many good examples exist around the world. So we have in China the National Forest City, that is a program that's aimed at making cities greener, so inviting cities to increase their canopy cover. Green Vancouver 2030. Vancouver is actually aiming at increasing its canopy cover by 2030, and it's taking a number of actions to really address many different environmental challenges. Singapore also is called the Garden City, that is a model of compact city with a very interesting green canopy cover that has been investing in its vision. Curitiba with BioCity program that is actually addressed to increase the biodiversity in and around the city. And then also some like a European scheme for European Green City like Ljubljana, that was actually the European Green City in 2016. What about India? Actually in India we have several problems with air quality, and we saw that the green canopy cover is actually decreasing within cities. We have some example like in Bangalore that was actually known as the Garden City of India. Actually the green cover has been decreasing over the last years. And in some others we have indeed improvement, like in Delhi, where the 20% of the geographical area is actually covered by the canopy cover. And what is interesting is that in the new draft Indian urban forestry policy in 2018, actually the role of trees outside forests and urban green spaces have been highlighted in the policy. And it's clearly mentioned, this is taken directly from the document, that will be taken up an emission mode for attaining the national goal of bringing 1/3 of the area under the forest and tree cover, and also for achieving the INDC targets of the country. So it's really recognized how urban forests and trees can support in also achieving the country commitments and goals. What next? We will be working during this year to dissemination of the call for action and to the promotion of the 3 cities of the work program. We will go for regional adapting this, let's say, the program and the actions to be taken, because the idea behind these 3 cities of the work program is that cities that are actually not able to achieve the 5 standards will be entering this community, this network of cities, and asking for our support for being able to achieve those 5 standards. And our role will be that of providing technical assistance, twinning cities. So if cities have been facing the same challenges and have been succeeding in what they did, actually they can be a good example for other cities. So there could be a mutual support. So this is the idea behind the program. And this is what we are going to work on mainly. And then there will be some activities developed, of course, in the framework of this program and in general with regard to urban forest implementation. And then there is the new FAO Urban Food Agenda, where FAO is actually, where Urban Forestry Program is actually contributing in a sub-program on food, increasing food and green environments. So it's actually a sub-program that aim at increasing the healthy lifestyle of people within cities. And green areas and urban forestry are going to play a role in this. Briefly, sorry to not be that short, agroforestry, because we have, as we said, 2 programs actually. Very briefly, what is agroforestry? Agroforestry is the practice of integrating trees in farms and agricultural lands to diversify actually the production in a sustainable manner. Sustainable, we mean socially, economically, and environmentally sustainable. Here are some examples of how agroforestry can be. It actually can take many different forms. It can be, first of all, trees in agricultural lands or crop within the forest. It can be like windbreaks, because actually agroforestry is when I deliberately put a tree together with crops, with agriculture, for the benefits I can take from it. It can be because I can take the fruit that the tree provide. It can be because it increases soil fertility for the crop that will grow in my plot. So when I integrate the 2, because I think because I can take an advantage from that, that's agroforestry. That's the logic behind. Agroforestry is actually very important because it can support the 4 pillars of food security. That is actually food availability. If I have a tree close to my house in my agricultural land, I can have more food to eat because it can produce fruit. So it can be an additional income in terms of fruit to eat, but also product to sell to the market. Then it also increases the food system stability because trees can improve soil fertility. They can also, of course, the right association between tree and crop can increase also what is the total production of the land. Food accessibility. I have the tree and close to my house. What I take from the tree is really easily accessible, and also what I take can be sold, and then I can have access to other food or other products. And then the food use as well, because it's important, because trees also provide wood fuel, and in Africa it still represents the 80% of the energy that is used for domestic use. So also it's not just having the food, but being able to cook the food and to also boil the water. So it's also increased the food security in terms of how we use the food. We are able to cook it, and so it's safer. So agroforestry, in light of all the things said before, agroforestry has been actually acknowledged as a climate-smart agriculture practices, because it can, as we said, increase farmers' production, enhance soil fertility, water regulation. So it can really address all the main things that are actually used to define a practice as climate-smart, and is also mentioned, as we see in this scheme that recall the climate-smart agricultural approach. At the same time, it can also contribute to the SDG and the NDCs as well. As we see, it can contribute to the climate action because it can help to mitigate and adapt to climate change. I mean, it increases the cover of trees, so it can help in sequestering more carbon. And, but at the same time, if I have trees available, for example, for timber, for wood fuel, I will not go and exploit the natural forest. So it's a double win, let's say. I don't use the natural forest, and but I have the product to be used because I'm growing that in my field. And it can also actually support also the achievement of other SDG, like no poverty, zero hunger. So at least other 6 are for sure benefiting from the implementation of agroforestry. Of course, the same for the Paris Agreement. When we speak about climate change, of course, if it can support in mitigating and adapting, it's also contributed to the Paris Agreement, to the NDCs, achievement on the NDCs. What are the main barriers? Of course, agroforestry is facing many barriers to its adoption. First of all, often there are adverse regulations within countries and that are not really promoting the implementation of agroforestry. There is also a delay in the return. I mean, I plant a tree because I will take the product from the tree, but it will take time. So if I'm not sure that I have if the tenure of the land or the product is not sure, I'm not actually, there is no interest for the farmer to invest in something they will not, if they don't have return, if they could not have return. Then there is a lack of intersectoral coordination. Should forestry deal with that, or should agriculture? So it's in between, and when things are in between, sometimes it's not clear who is taking care of that. There is also an ignorance of the advantages of agroforestry. So often people don't know, farmers, but especially people that are let's say, the policymakers that should actually support the implementation, the enabling environment for agroforestry. There is a lack of incentives that often are even given for other kind of practices that are not compatible, of course, with agroforestry, so people will be more invited to go for practices that are, for which they can receive incentives. And also lack of data and limited use of existing knowledge. We don't know enough, and I mean, information also on what is the right combination between trees and crops should be further explored, and research should be further conducting on that. Several countries are promoting agroforestry. We have Brazil with a strategy for agroforestry, Kenya, France, Vietnam, Rwanda, for example, that pledge in the context of the forest landscape restoration for restoring 2 million hectares by 2030, decided that agroforestry could be one of the main practices to be implemented for achieving that goal. What about India? Agroforestry in India is actually widely practiced, but there is still, let's say, there is still it's still possible to improve further. What is interesting is that India was the first country where an agroforestry policy, a dedicated agroforestry policy, was developed. It was in 2014, and actually it's interesting because it gives a definition of agroforestry, of the contribution it can provide also action points to be taken to implement agroforestry. And also it tried to converge the various programs that are actually aiming to planting trees outside forests. So it's trying to really coordinate the different efforts made by the country. And also some guidelines were developed for technical implementation of the agroforestry to support the implementation. So it's an interesting case, and we will see how it will go. And about normative and technical work as well, we have been developing the Advancing Agroforestry and Policy Agenda that actually report the main challenges that are the ones that I mentioned before for agroforestry implementation. And then there are other technical works, books about some cases and some example of implementation of agroforestry, like in rice production landscapes in Southeast Asia. Again, we have the toolbox, so with a module on agroforestry and the website with several information. Again, we have different projects that we developed. One, for example, in Seychelles. What was the issue? There is a move of agricultural production from the flat to the hill. That's also because of the tourism that is increasing in the coastal areas. So what's the problem is that it's expected that in the next years there will be less food production, and also that the forests will be impacted by this moving the agriculture towards the hills. And so our project there was actually aimed to revise the laws and regulation in order to make them, in order to better support and to make it possible the implementation of agroforestry. There were some pilot farms that were created, and people like farmers, extension service officers and forestry officers were trained on agroforestry techniques and different practices that can be implemented. There was also done a market survey, because before implementing an agroforestry or this practice, we have to see what can be sold in the market, because nobody will grow something that cannot be sold if the aim is that of having a revenue and income. So it was very important also to have the survey conducted and to see what could be sold and what were the challenges for a possible market of agroforestry products. And then business plans were developed, and the different policy options were actually presented to the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, and now we will see how things will go. So that's more or less an overview of what we are doing. And thank you for your attention. And these are the contacts. And Simone Borelli is the forestry officer, is currently on duty travel, so couldn't be here. And these are the links to the FAO website. So that's all.
And we will open a few questions or comments. Please be mindful also of the time, because we still have one presentation before 5 where the bus is expecting us. But of course, 1 or 2 comments are welcome and always.
I can give the comment for the whole group, which I should. You want to give?
So are there any financial instrument available for a small farmer for planting long rotation species so that he can get a regular income?
Can you please repeat? If financing mechanisms are available for smallholder farmers?
Smallholding farmers, so that he can get a regular income for planting a long rotation species.
You use the financial models.
Yes.
What he's trying to say is, are there financial models available for a small or a medium-scale farmer to plant long rotation trees and give him a sustainable income? I don't think so.
Okay. And actually, it depends a lot on the context where we are. Of course, it changes a lot from country to country. So in some contexts, they have been actually developing and also going on this kind of incentives for farmers to support them and to increase, let's say, the implementation of agroforestry. But many other actions, of course, must be taken, first of all, from the policy aspects, also the fact of creating policies that can really support the implementation of agroforestry and creating an enabling environment for that to be implemented. And so different schemes, are present, but they must be a part of the wider picture where all the different issues are addressed. Like, as we said, tenure security, we are actually about to release a document on agroforestry and tenure to underline what are the main challenges that actually agroforestry face with regard to tenure. As we said before, I can give incentive, I can support farmers, but if they don't have the security of the tenure on the land or on the products, they will never be really incentivized to plant the tree. So they are there, but they must be part of the total of a bigger framework. Otherwise, they will not be enough for succeeding. But anyway, there are some experiences that are being done around the world. So it's increasing, but there is also always often a need to support in creating the whole picture and the whole enabling environment.
Thank you.
Suppose I am a manager of a city, a very dense city, no space for planting any green tree. So how should I go about that, and how should I take the expertise of FAO along? I can download few documents from the websites, but how really can practically involve FAO? What are the processes involved?
Okay, it's a quite complicated, not question, but answer. Actually, FAO works with the government, so the requests must come from the country. So there can be some discussion, preliminary discussion, but the request must come from the country. And usually we go for what is called TCP, Technical Cooperation Projects. TCP are two projects that last 2 years, that are the ones that I presented before, like in Cape Verde, for example. So the government asks for our support. We support them in building the partnership, in finding consultants and everything, and also in funding the budget, particularly, so the resource. And so these 2 years project is developed and implemented, but the aim of the project is actually to prepare the ground for something bigger that will come. So the role of FAO usually at the beginning is that of preparing the ground, so helping the city to see, like in the case of Cape Verde, what are the gaps? What's the tree cover? What's the tree cover I would need? How can I address these challenges? What should I do to build an urban forestry strategy? In case of Cape Verde, it has not still been developed, so the outcome of the project, of this TCP, was not the urban forestry strategy, but preparing, informing, preparing technically, but also creating the partnership with all the stakeholders involved for working together towards the development and implementation of an urban forestry strategy. So usually FAO works in that way. And then if budget is found and if there is resource for building something bigger, the work go on with our support and with the support of other partners that work in this context. I don't know if I, okay.
Okay, what you said. See, FAO doesn't work. I'll explain.
Yeah, please.
All projects actually come to Ministry of Agriculture. They actually said, like they said, we work on a TCP, Technical Cooperation Project. So suppose there is a forestry project. We interested that we want to do this sort of work with FAO. It has to be reported to the Ministry of Agriculture because they are the focal point of FAO. And FAO will only help in sort of as a startup. Okay, so it can be a TCP project for developing, say, yield models or yield tables of 1 or 2 species. But you never have done that for all 100 species you will FAO to do it. It can show you this. Or suppose we will lay permanent observation plots, which we used to lay earlier, but it has been stopped. Okay. So we want to develop a protocol of laying permanent observation plots in the field of forest areas to assess climate change, wind, whatever it is. So they can develop a model, but then you have to take it forward. That's how it works.
In fact, yeah, we have HQ, but we also have regional, sub-regional country offices, and usually the government deal directly with the country office, with the FAO representatives, and then all the rest of the FAO will be involved.
Any last comment?
I actually wanted to say, I actually, when I came in with Mr. Ruto, I saw one of your slides which says that the green cover is decreasing in India. The green cover hasn't decreased, it's in fact increasing. I'm not sure from where you got the data of green cover is decreasing.
Decreasing?
Yes, there was a slide which stated green cover is decreasing. Maybe it's for urban forestry, but even for urban forestry, if you look at it overall, there has been an increase.
In Bangalore, you mean?
I'm not sure about Bangalore, of course.
But yeah, it's improving.
You've written in the second line, decline in country's green cover. So I refute that statement. So there is.
Okay. I will check again.
Yes,
I took from sources, from
so
documents online. But anyway.
No.
Okay.
There has been an increase in the country's green cover, but for urban areas, maybe Bangalore has come down. But as you rightly said, Delhi has improved like anything. Though Delhi is one of the most polluted cities, and people ask me, how do you stay in Delhi? I'm saying we can stay in Delhi only because the green cover is increased. Otherwise, everyone would be wearing a mask. It's a fact. And Chandigarh, of course, and Gandhinagar, most of the cities actually have increased because nowadays we have moved into urban forestry. It was not a focus earlier, it has become a focus now. Yeah. And in 2003 onwards, we've been actually enumerating by laying plots within the cities to estimate what is the total green cover. That's one. The other thing is, you rightly said that we need to push agroforestry more. India was one of the earlier countries, 2014, our agroforestry policy came, very true. There has been a lot of thrust through the Green India Mission, which unfortunately hasn't taken off in the way it should have. So you said 13.5 million hectares, a lot more potential is there. I agree with you fully. But now the government's thrust is actually on agroforestry. One of the best amendments which have been done in our Indian Forest Act is amendment of Section 5.2 of the Act, by which bamboo, which is a tree as per the Act, we have now said that this is not a tree if it is grown outside the recorded forest area, thereby giving an incentive to the farmers that you plant as much as possible bamboos, because bamboo grows very fast, it sequesters carbon very fast, and it has a lot of potential to earn money. So, income of the farmers would increase, our green cover would increase, it would also add to the NDC targets. So that's a policy shift which has happened in India, which is in the last 1.5 years, which is phenomenal. And I hope that in the next couple of years, we would see a significant increase in the agroforestry cover in India. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further comments, just to recall the program of these 2 weeks, I visited last Wednesday morning to the Greenbelt of Vitoria. It was exactly linked to what we have seen here, and Vitoria was one of these green European cities in 2012 exactly. To recall all the information you have regarding urban forests in the Manitoba conference of last November. There's really, Michela did a resume, but there's a bulk of information in the website regarding the conference. Then the importance of urban forestry, for sure, for the health issues just commented by Mr. Dasgupta, but as well as a communication tool for forest services. It's a way to enter a population that will be more and more detached from rurality and they will hardly understand forestry, so also this is an important tool. It was commented, what do you do in a very dense city? Well, in the developed world, there is a huge investment now in vertical gardens with enormous cost. Just allow lianas. It's X time, but in logarithmic terms, more cheaper, and frequently not allowed due to regulations or ownership issues or whatever. To plant a liana that grows up to 20 meters generates the same as a vertical garden with not the problem of watering and a very expensive issue that I would never recommend a developing country. As far as you have contact with the soil, that it is not everything a parking lot or whatever, then you have no solution. As far as you have some direct contact with soil and you can water, a vertical liana is an ideal solution, especially oriented to the south. And then regarding the operation of FAO, I mean, TCPs are interesting. First, when forestry is in the agriculture ministry, it's not very easy to lock money out of the agriculture ministry into other departments, by obvious reasons. Second, in small countries, because practically the budget allows 1 or 2 TCPs per biennium per country in all the area of FAO, so fisheries, rural development, food, agriculture, forest, livestock, and so on. So it's not that easy in a big country to get money for that, and the amount is not very strong. It's an ideal seed money for a bigger project. But there are many elements. I commented to you just this morning the issue of the accredited agencies for GEF and now for the Green Climate Fund. That is really where you can go to sizable project with FAO. In that kind of solutions, and as well with the financial institutions, there as well, financial institutions are very good, they have lots of resources, but they lack of specialists. This is a big issue, whereas FAO or the health organization have a lot of specialists. So by aligning and combining, you can get the resources of financial institutions, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and so on, and on the other hand, include FAO. Doesn't need to be with a big budget share, but with the specialist knowledge. And frequently we see that projects driven just by the financial institution or by UNDP lack of the substantiveness, but eventually only FAO may not have the muscle to implement a very big project. So sometimes combined projects who take advantage of the strengths of the different organizations engaged is the solution. So please think about that and eventually leave TCP for exceptional situations. For example, policy advice that doesn't need to be very expensive, or setting a bigger project, then TCPs are ideal. Okay, grazie, and a small present from our side. Michela. Grazie mille per tutto.